Hey guys, this is Max from FL Studio Tips, and today I will show you how to go from this to this. We'll be mastering this ADM house. That's one of the tracks we've mixed together in our mixing course. Link to full track in the description. If you have completely different genre song like trap or hip hop, the process won't differ too much, so definitely follow along. So when rendering our mix, we keep the master channel empty and render our song in 32-bit mode. Now we load it in the new project and we can normalize it, and we'll be focusing on listening to the busiest parts of our song. So usually you can see it by the waveform, right? So we'll be focusing on this part right here and somewhere here on this part. So first thing we'll start with is cleaning up the track. And the way we do it is by applying parametric EQ to, and we'll choose the preset 40 or 30 kHz cut. And depending on how low in your track you go, I like to cut it through at least 30 kHz, as you can see here. Although you can see that the 30 kHz starts here, and we'll be taking off some frequencies before 30 kHz. Most clap systems don't go lower than 35. So you won't lose anything if you cut it right here. Believe me, some people will tell you to cut at no more than 20 Hz, which doesn't make any sense. I won't go in depth into it. I see even people go at 40 kHz, which also can help you later get a little bit louder song. So the sweet spot I find is about 30 kHz here, even if you start cutting from 33, 32. And then the second part is the high cut, which is already something. It depends on the mastering engineer. Some mastering engineers will cut at 16 kHz, some will at 17, some will at 18. I like to personally cut at 16.5 or something like that. You can see that our bass and kick doesn't go lower than 40 kHz, so cutting it here won't affect any power of our song. And then here, we can hear what we are cutting out if we change it to high pass. I set it to 16.5, and let's hear what we are cutting out. Those frequencies are really hurting my ear. I used to not want to cut at 16.5 because I wanted this top end, and the solution was not cutting it, but the solution was to cut it at 16.5 and then add one peak like that and boost it a little bit before 16.5 like that. You won't feel much of the difference if you're not listening on good headphones or speakers. So I don't feel like adding anything on the top. I want to cut at 16.5 since we have a lot of these very high harsh frequencies, and let's move on. Next step in mastering would be some enhancement EQ. For example, looking for some frequencies in your tonal balance and looking what you could add, what you're lacking, what's too much, for example. For that purpose, you can use our human hearing range infographic, which will tell you what frequencies to boost, what frequencies to attenuate, if you have, for example, a thin mix, if you have too muddy mix, etc. Let's search for some frequencies that we could add or cut. There's not much to change here since we took a lot of time to mix it very carefully. But we could, for example, add a little bit in the mids here to bring up the higher body of the mix. Make sure that the changes in your EQ do not exceed 2 dB. If you feel like you need to boost a lot in the bass to make it sound more thick, then just go back to your mix and fix it there. There are also very cool techniques in the low end, but I don't think we need it in this track. Not much to do in our enhancement EQ step. Now let's move to the third EQ, which we'll be using this time Patcher. We'll go into the presets, and in our free Patcher preset pack you will find mid-side EQ, very simple preset. Here you have your mid channel and here you have your side channel. We'll be using side channel EQ to get rid of the muddiness in our track. Let's unroot the mid so we can hear only side. Let's hear actually what we are getting rid of. Let's now hear it in the mix. If you're listening on good headphones, you will definitely hear how much more space in the mix we make, especially in the low end, just with this simple trick. I use it on every single song. At this point, you could also think of enhancing some of the mid frequencies or cutting some of the lows, for example. Or if you hear some bad peaks just in the stereo, for example, you can take it down here. Let's do it like that, but if you don't feel like you need it, anything at mastering stage, definitely do not do it. Mastering is all about the subtlety. 95% of the work is already done when mixing. So mastering is just polishing it out. So now after we fixed up our song and curved the frequency shape of it, now we can take care of the dynamics, which is the second major step when mastering. When you listen to the track, you might not hear much of the problems with dynamics. But if you look, for example, at the waveform, you can see how much the kick is popping through everything. And nowadays, too high dynamic range, so the difference between the loudest and lowest peaks, is not perceived too professional sounding. So that's why we need compression. Before you do it though, you need to ask yourself if your track is too punchy or is it too smooth. For example, this track is a little bit too punchy, so compression will use only if your track is too punchy or too smooth. If it's perfect for your ear, then you might not have to do much of the compression we'll do right now. So the level 1 will be with Fruity Limiter in compressor mode, of course, and if our track is too punchy, we take the threshold down and increase the ratio to about 2. I recommend not more than that. Now we make sure that we don't hear the compression, but we feel it. So if your track is too punchy, we'll take very quick attack, like 1 to 2 or even 0 as it was here. So if we leave it like that, we have about 2 dB of compression, and that's pretty alright. Now, if your track is a little bit too smooth and you want the kick to pop through a little bit more, you will take higher amount of attack. Now we'll need to go down with the threshold to hear the difference, since the kick is not long enough to trigger the compressor. You can see that about 40 milliseconds or 60 milliseconds can be enough to get the first transient of the kick through and make it more clicky and more popping through. Although in our track we'll definitely need quick attack. The settings of release and sustain, as they are by default, are pretty good to start with, but simple compressor like that is not the ideal way to master your tracks. Look, we're taking down the volume of whole track as soon as kick triggers the compressor. I know something better than that will give you way better results, and it's using our favorite Maximus. So now we get rid of the compressor, and in Maximus, look what happens here. We can compress each band of our track, so low, mid and highs separately. Why is it super cool? Because let's listen to it. You can see how different the waveform looks here for each band. And with our simple compressor, we could only take the whole track like that, as we have it in the master. And thanks to multi-band compressor like Maximus, we can compress each band individually. It might put a lot of you off since it's a little bit complicated. How much should I take down from the lows, how much from the mids, how much from the highs? And the idea here is not to know what are the perfect settings, but just do it. Just compress it a little bit. Compressing each band individually will already give you great results. Way better than compressor and way better usually than without multiband compressor at all. So very subtly, we compress each band individually. Alright, now let's listen to how it sounds. Now, in the mid section, for example, we can increase the attack this time, since we might want our plugs, for example, or clap to get a little bit more through the mix. So I set it to, for example, 20 milliseconds. And our low end, we definitely wanted to keep as stable as possible, since dynamic range in the lows will make a little bit more amateur sound. And now we're having about -3 dB of compression. So it will be good to just increase the post gain to about 2.5, for example, to compensate for what we've lost. Same in the mids, let's say we have about 3 here, so we'll take a 2.5 again, and in the highs we have about 2 dB, so we can increase it to less than that, like that. Tell me what you do for love, 'cause what you're doing is not enough. Tell me what you do for us, 'cause I'm fading. You can see that our peak level is even lower than before applying Maximus. Our low end doesn't pop up too much through the mix, it's more compressed with the bass. Our mids are a little bit more popping through and also controlled at the same time. And we are also controlling just the peaks in the high end. Now we are staying in Maximus, and the next step we'll do is some stereo enhancements. We have this magic knob here in Maximus. I like to go and merge it a little bit so it's more in mono. We have a lot of low plugs in our track, so we don't have to merge it too much. About 15% or 20% is enough. Now in the mids, we can make them a little bit more in stereo depending on what track you have. It will open it up a little bit, but too much will make it sound very weird. So about 15 or 20% on separated, and now in highs. We can go a little bit more in the stereo here. Let's hear everything we got so far before and after. You can hear that the low end is way more punchy. We got rid of all muddiness in the very lows. The track is way cleaner and the dynamic range feels more professional. The track before sounded really good, but now it feels way more polished, and we are not done yet. For next step, we'll still stay in Maximus, and at this point we'll be maximizing our volume. If you watched the previous video, you know the significant difference between limiter and maximizer. If you don't know what's up, please check the previous video. It's very crucial that you understand what's happening. And for everybody who knows what's up, we'll go into the Maximus section and we'll set the threshold to mode A or mode B, depending on which one you will like in a second. set it to about 1%, so we just trigger the saturator and we don't get too much of the distortion as we'll be pushing up the volume. And now, very, very important, the ceiling we have to set to -1 dB if you're exporting your track to MP3. If you're not exporting your track to MP3, you can go to -0.3 dB or -0.1 or even 0 dB if you're super crazy. I would not recommend doing that, but exporting your track will cause inter-sample peaking. We talk about everything related to mastering that you need to know to make professional masters in depth in this course, but essentially we want to avoid any clipping after compressing our track to MP3 from WAV. So that's why we set them sync to -1 dB, and we'll be increasing the post gain until we reach audible distortion and then take it down 1 or 2 dB from that point. It can get pretty loud right now, and we make sure to take the loudest part of our song. Tell me what you do for love. Tell me what you do, what you do. Tell me what you do for love, 'cause what you're doing is not enough. Tell me what you do for us, 'cause I'm fading. So this technique of getting the loudness to the point we get distortion and then taking it down 1 or 2 dB should get you the best possible results. It is common to use loudness meter, which will tell you how loud actually your song is without any reference. For that, you can use such tool as Yulin loudness meter, and it will just tell you how loud your song is. Tell me what you do for love. Tell me what you do, what you do. Tell me what you do for love. And now, why do you need to know that you're at specific amount of loops? Because there are some legends about streaming services taking down the volume of your track to desired loops. The thing is, Spotify says, for example, it will lower your song down to -14 LUFS, but not many people will tell you that it will take the average of your song. So for example, if we have here, tell me what you do for us, 'cause I'm fading. -13, and for the half of the track and half of the track 7, it will make to about 10 LUFS average. So it will lower it only -4 dB. I'm telling you from deep of my heart, do not mind about streaming services normalization. It doesn't have any sense at all. If it's true, whatever choice you make, it will always be -14 LUFS, and you are the producer or mastering engineer, and you are deciding how loud your song is. The first best way to know what loudness you should hit is to take your track as loud as you can without getting crazy, so without getting audible distortion. That's what we did. We didn't have to look for the loops, we just took it down as much as we can without distorting our track. The second best way is to take your favorite track in the similar genre, put it next to yours, measure the LUFS of it, and put your track as loud as this reference track is. Since we don't want our listeners to put down the volume or put up the volume of our track when they are listening to the playlist, or a DJ in a club, for example, doesn't have to take it down or higher. We talk about it way more in the course. It's not necessary to talk about more about it right now. There is one step left, and that is automations. What you could automate throughout the track, for example, is the loudness. So we could take the post gain that we used as last gain knob in our chain, create automation clip, and now it is common for your breakdowns to be a little bit too loud compared to the drop. It's not true in our case, since you can see how low in the volume we go before the drop. But essentially copy the value, paste it before you drop and in the moment of breakdown, and lower the volume about 2 dB before the drop, like that, gradually. Same thing we could do before the second drop, about 2 or 3 dB. That will make sure that your drop hits a little bit harder. People also take down the volume overall through whole breakdowns. That's also a good technique to make a little bit more of the difference between drop and breakdown. This step is extremely important. Do not forget about it. Next step to make your drop even harder is automating the stereo separation. We can take this one on the master, copy value, and equally as with the volume, we make 2 dots, one just before the drop and one in the breakdown, and merge everything just before the drop, like that. And without it,
tell me what you do.
The drop simply opens up way more than without this automation. So we can do it like that for both of the drops, more or less depending on your track. Now we can just make sure that our ending is as we want it. For example, with the fade like that. And in the beginning, we can leave a couple of milliseconds before it starts. Now we just hit Ctrl and R, set it to MP3, set the wave to 24-bit, MP3 to 320 kilobytes, enable the dithering, resampling might be the highest amount, and start. If you want to learn professional mastering and let us guide you through every theoretical and technical corner of mastering all genres with the best available and stock VSTs, check our full mastering course, which is now open for enrollment. With over 40 lessons, over 4 hours of trainings, I will say it again, but it really is cheaper than a single mastering service and it stays with you for life. Thank you for your support, and if you like today's video, leave a comment, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next video.